Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Hall. We are going to be doing part 2 of the granite quarries of Westford, Massachusetts. Part 2 deals with the Snake Meadow Hill area of Westford, which is in Granitville, which prior to the mid-1850s was known as Stone Quarry. And it was Mr. Sargent who changed the name to Granitville. So, the quarries at Snake Meadow Hill in Granitville, according to the 1886 Granitville print, and this was done compliments of Abbott Company. And you can see in the center the Mill Pond area, and then in the back of that hill is Snake Meadow Hill. Those clearings on the hill are the approximate areas of the most significant quarries that were in that area. According to the History of Westford, 1883, that was written by Reverend Edward R. Hodgman, the first quarrying from the ledges on Snake Meadow Hill was done by Benjamin Palmer, a native of Camden, Maine. He came to this town in March of 1847. At first, he worked on boulders, or cobbles, as the quarrymen call them, and his stone was drawn by teams into Lowell. He soon began to work on the ledges and has continued the business to the present time. He employs 21 men, besides 4 others who get out paving stones exclusively. Also, 3 horses and 1 yoke of oxen. Benjamin F. Palmer was born in Thomaston, Maine. His family were among the first settlers of Camden, Maine, and were seafaring people. Benjamin went to sea at the early age as a cabin boy. Then at 12 years old, Benjamin was learning the stone cutting trade at a Boston stone yard. He learned the trade thoroughly. And in 1846, Palmer opened the granite quarries on Snake Meadow Hill in Granitville. Palmer supplied granite to all parts of New England and cities like New York, New Orleans, and Chicago. Having the railroads built close to his granite business made it easy for shipping. Granite for some of the Stony Brook Railroad bridges was supplied by his company. Below, on the left, is an advertisement from the New England Gazette for Benjamin Palmer's granite dealer: foundations, dams, bridges, underpinnings, sills, Granitville blocks for street paving. And on the right, that 1847 receipt for $10 was for 4 weeks of room and board paid by Benjamin Palmer for a granite worker. Okay, by 1881, Benjamin Palmer owns over 80 acres on Snake Meadow Hill. Below is a railroad notice for the construction of a railroad spur to the quarries in 1853. This 1853-55 Sims map shows the proposed spur location. And to the left, this is the index of the special railroad laws of Massachusetts. May construct a branch in Westford to the granite quarry with a location within 3 years. So it was proposed. And when you look at the Sims map, you can see in the center area, in conjunction, spur would have paralleled the existing quarry road and served Palmer and the other quarry owners. The Stony Brook Railroad spur to Snake Meadow Hills Quarry. On the left, this is the survey by Edward Sims in the 1850s, showing the proposed spur lines to Palmer's quarry and other quarries. However, when you look on the right, the 1889 map of Westford showing Granitville Village and some quarry locations, you see no railroad spur is shown on the 1889 or the 1875 maps. Lewis P. Palmer, son of Benjamin, takes over the granite business when his father dies in 1889. The business is renamed L.P. Palmer and Sons. Lewis continues to grow and modernize the company with his sons Lewis B. and Mark A. Below, some L.P. Palmer business letterheads. The one at the top, Louis P. Palmer continues the ownership under the name of Middlesex Granite Company in 1909. But Louis P. Palmer establishes the L.P. Palmer Granite Company with his sons Louis B. and Mark A. Palmer, and it becomes L.P. Palmer and Sons Granite Company. A rock drilling mechanism patented by Mark A. and Mark A. Palmer Jr. of Granitville, Mass. in 1937. To your left, you can see the patent that was applied for in 1936, and then on the right, the Palmer Machine Company advertisement for the drilling mechanism. Look at the two pictures. The one on the left shows plug drilling without using this machine, with all that dust flying up in the face of the driller. On the right, there's no dust. And that was the essence of the mechanism that was designed by the Palmers. The home picture below left was moved by Benjamin Palmer from Camden, Maine. It is shown on the 1853 Sims map. The home was moved by boat to Boston and then by oxen team to its present site at 41 North Main Street. The home was enlarged by Benjamin and has been in the family since he came to Westford. In the left-hand side, that's the Palmer home, barn, and family members in 1863. I might add at this time that Bill and Connie Rogers live there today. Connie is a descendant of the Palmers, and some of the documents you're going to be seeing in the up-and-coming slides were provided by Connie, things that were stored in her attic that she allowed us and contributed to the Westford Museum. Okay, on the right-hand side, Mark Palmer Jr. aerial view of the Palmer home. The truck garage, the Palmer quarry is at the top. Mark Jr. had his pilot's license and owned a plane. Doobie's Bridge, for those of you who are much familiar with Granitville, this is a 1915 postcard of the Stony Brook Railroad Bridge built in 1847. The granite stones were supplied by Palmer Quarry, called Doobie's or Dupree's Bridge, after the Frank Doobie family who lived at 44 North Main Street in the early 1900s. And on the right-hand side, this is the former home of Benjamin Palmer at 41 North Main Street as it looks today, and that's where Connie and Bill Rogers live. The Boston, Nashua, and Acton Railroad Arch Bridge, built in 1869, is now part of the Russell Bird Sanctuary. The granite was supplied by Benjamin Palmer and the William Reed's quarries. On the left, that's a postcard photo of the Arch Bridge when it was still in operation, actually. And another one from 2016. Of course, the railroad is no longer in operation. The Granitville Railroad Station. This photo shows the Fletcher, Reed, and Palmer stone yard to the rear with derricks that were used to offload granite from the wagons onto the railroad cars for delivery. This is from the Day Family Photo Collection. It was taken around 1900. On the right-hand side, this is a 1940s photo showing that a portion of the station has been taken down. In the 1950s, passenger service was discontinued, and the station also was taken down in about the mid-1950s. There's a couple of pictures of the fleet of trucks belonging to L.P. Palmer and Sons outside their sales office in what was known as Quarry Road, which ran in back of the house at 41 North Main Street. Okay, a couple of Palmer family photos. The The one on the left is an aerial photo of the manufacture area at Palmer's Quarry, showing the upper quarry and the lower quarries. And probably in the center there you can see the manufacturing area. That was the lower quarry in that area. The light area in the back of that is what we would consider the upper quarry. On the right, the 1940s Palmer Upper Quarry derrick manufacturing complex can be seen in the background. A couple of more pictures. The one on the left is drilling holes for granite splitting. And the one on the right, you can see one of the workers and the size of those blocks. Granite block was being ready for moving by the derrick. Overhead sliding crane to move the granite around the manufacturing area into the shops for cutting. On the left, the crane under construction, and on the right, the crane finished and being put to work. Snake Meadow Hill Quarries. Owners of the quarries would sometimes rent out their quarry or portions of land to others. Take a look at the aerial view on the left-hand side showing active and inactive quarries. Starting at the top, you see the Wright Couture quarry, and then below that Palmer's quarry, and to the far right you see it's a swimming hole. And then to the left of that, Palmer's quarry. Just below that, the Ministerial Couture quarry. To the left of that, William Reed H.W. Hildreth quarry, and to the left of that is the David Reed quarry. And finally at the bottom, the Samuel Fletcher quarry. I mentioned the swimming hole. This picture on the right shows Palmer Quarry swimmers. And this was taken in 1942. I don't know who the swimmers were there, but I'm willing to bet that there are pictures in someone's attic someplace from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when my generation was using that. And you could have gone there any afternoon during the summer, the 1960s, and seen a group of kids using that peninsula and swimming in that area. Very popular. Okay, the Palmer family continues to run the business until it is sold to the Bianchi family in 1951. In 1955, the last quarry operated by a Palmer was Richard Palmer, who sells 13 acres to H.E. Fletcher. Bianchi's keep the name of L.T. Palmer and Sons. Bianchi sell to the Essex Bituminous Company in 1963. Okay, the Palmer Quarry at Snake Meadow Hill after 1963. On the left, L.P. Palmer and Sons Incorporated sells the quarry and the lands to Essex Bituminous of West Peabody, Mass. in 1963. Then Essex sells to the Pasella Corporation in 1976. And you can see this is the building along Quarry Road with the plaquage showing Essex Bituminous. On the right, very interesting picture. This is building at the former Palmer Quarry was built by Nashoba Cable in the 1980s to house the transmitter for the company. Near it was the transmission tower. Who was Nashoba Cable? Well, back in the 1980s, early 1980s, when cable TV first came to Westford, that was the company that brought cable TV to Westford. That's changed immensely over the last 40 years. Post-granite quarrying era. The Pasella Corporation purchases the property from Essex Bituminous in 1976 for the recycling of concrete, brick, granite, and other construction debris. On the left, that's the Pasella building that housed the office and the maintenance garage. And this is a 2022 photo. And on the right, the Pasella building is still part of the Granitville Materials today. Granitville Materials, 49 North Main Street, established in 2010 on the old Palmer Quarry, producing crushed aggregate products from stone dust to 1.5 inch stone. They also take in concrete and bricks to recycle for use in roads, driveways, parking lots, and deep fill projects. On the left-hand side, that's a picture of the granite material offices in November of 2015. And this is, on the right-hand side, a Google 3D map from 2022. And that area, basically, it shows with granite materials, but that same area would have been where Palmer's upper and lower quarries were. This was the center area on the left-hand side of the old Palmer quarry. This photo shows the equipment for drilling. Looking closely, you can see the drill holes in granite dust mounds. These drill holes are used to insert explosives for blasting. And on the right, the area of Granitville materials was known as the former Upper Palmer Quarry, which was known as the Big Hole. In the background, if you look closely, you can see the Westford Highway Garage. On the left, overlooking the quarry towards North Street and North Main Street in Granitville. And on the right, the photo shows the processed stone that Granite Materials crushes and sells. The William Reed Quarry. Information and the sketch are from Hodgman's History of Westford in 1883. March 1st, 1853, William Reed I, is a native of Acton, bought of Thomas Hutchins 61 acres of land on Snake Meadow Hill, and in connection with his brother David, Reed began the business of quarrying. The lot lies on the crest of the hill and is long and narrow. In a year or two, the lot was divided between the brothers, William taking the portion on the top of the hill and David the western part toward and including some of Cowdery Hill. They still continue the business. William Reed employs about 20 men for 8 or 9 months in the year, also 6 horses, 1 yoke of oxen. His annual sales run between $8,000 and $12,000 per year. The picture, the sketch, is from Hodgman's History of the Granite Quarry of William Reed. That's William Reed's quarry. His brother David's quarries was right next to it. You'll see that later on. Bernard Reed and his family came to Granitville in 1834. They came from Littleton, Mass. And moved to 119 North Main Street. Bernard and his 5 sons, George, William, Josiah, David, and Bernard Jr., worked as farmers and all worked in the granite business. George, William, and David went on to run their own granite businesses. And the Reed advertisement from the New England Gazetteer and Directory in 1883, you can see on the left, William Reed is a granite dealer, cutter of stone, granite blocks for street paving. Directly where it says sidewalks, you can see George Reed of Granitville is selling to hauling and setting for the cost of 13 to 15 cents stone that was used in Lawrence. And below that, from the Middlesex directory, you can see the Granitville quarriers at the time who were in the granite business: C.M. Cummings, Samuel Fletcher, L.P. Palmer, Noah Prescott and Company, George Reed, William Reed, and that would be Hammett D. Wright. The Reed Quarry of Granitville. Okay? What this is a petition for a Stone Quarry Railroad to run a railroad spur from the Reed Granite Ledge to the Stony Brook Railroad. It was approved by the governor in 1854. The article on the right lists the conditions and approval. However, we found no proof that this was ever done. So we speculated that Both the Palmers and the Reeds figured this was the best way to get the stone down from the quarries, and probably was not economically feasible. So they reverted back to the oxen carts, probably. And you can see maps showing the Reed home, stone yard, and blacksmith shop. 1875 map of Granitville. To the far left, you can see the Nashua and Acton Railroad. And right down in the left-hand corner is where the blacksmith shop was. Along, you can see the actual stone yards are close to the railroad tracks, both the Stony Brook Railroad and the Nashua and Acton Railroad. That's where Reed had his stone yard. And as you go up, which we know is North Main Street today, you can see the William Reed House and the Samuel Fletcher House. And across from the Samuel Fletcher House is the stone yard that was used by Fletcher and Palmer. On the right-hand side, on the Walker map, you see similar. William Reed Granite Yard in the same area, and also Fletcher and Reed and Palmer all using the stone yard close to where the Granitville station was located, across from Samuel Fletcher's house, which can be seen on that map. Some interesting correspondence. William and Reed and Samuel Fletcher correspondence. Once again, this is correspondence was found in the attic of Connie Rogers, who shared it and has since contributed to the Westford Museum. Lowell Manufacturing Company of Lowell requested William Reed and Samuel Fletcher to send in their bills. That's in 1871. And on the right, Wright and Scourgy of Cambridge requesting availability and pricing of edge stones from William Reed in 1892. Edge stones are 30 cents and circle edge stones are 60 cents each. Interesting correspondence. The home of Bernard and Mary Reed, who lived here in the 1800s. Bernard was the father of William and David, who had the larger quarries. Later, this is the home of David Reed and his wife, Harriet Reed. David Reed carried on his quarrying to the west of William Reed's quarry. This is the house he lived in. The Reed home today at 119 North Main Street, as it looks today. Home of the William Reed family before the building at 67 North Main Street is on the right-hand side, and that building still stands there today. And you can see it marked off on the 1889 map, and on the 1889 map shows the William Reed residence we know it today. Reed owned much of property along North Main Street, circa 1940, 89 North Main Street, courtesy of the Westford Museum, but he rented out a lot of these properties, okay, in his 89 North Main Street today. William and Rachel Reed built this home in 1875. It is located at 67 North Main Street and might be considered one of the Granitville mansions. William Reed, Herbert Hildreth Quarry in June 7th of 2022. On the left-hand side, this is the west wall of the quarry, one of the favorite spot for jumpers back when you could find swimmers there in the mid-1900s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And on the right-hand side, this is the north view and the east wall of the quarry. The David Reed Quarry, which is just to the west and north of the Reed Hildreth Quarry. Okay, on the left, this is the view of the abandoned quarry, and on the right, granite step ledges from that area also. An 1889 map of Granitville showing stone yards used by the quarries of Reed, Fletcher, and Palmer, and others located at Granitville and West Granitville railroad stations. Once again, the idea of having the railroads and the stone yards close by so they could be loaded right on with the derricks that were located by the stone yards also. The stone yard at the West Granitville station was located to the left of the railroad tracks. The stone yard was located where 98 North Main Street is located today. And you can see that's the West Granitville station, which would have been located in what we know today as a parking lot for St. Catherine's Church. The Reed Quarry becomes the Hildreth Quarry. H.V. Hildreth Quarry, formerly the William Reed Quarry. Growing up in town, we always called it Hildreth's Quarry. So H.V. Hildreth marries William Reed's daughter, Stella, upon William Reed's death in 1894. H.V. Hildreth takes over the quarry until its closing in the early 1930s. Take it first from the right-hand side. You can see H.V. Hildreth, a couple of advertisements there from the Lowell Directory at the top. And the Architectural Club ad, you can see that he didn't produce marble, but he sold it. So he was the middle agent, you might say. On the left-hand side, so Herbert V. Hildreth of Granitville was born in Westford, received a secondary education at Westford Academy. He went on to attend the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He served as a lieutenant in Company L, 8th Regiment of Infantry, Massachusetts Volunteer Militia, and a sergeant in Troop F Cavalry, Massachusetts Volunteer Militia. He made his living as a granite dealer at the quarry in Granitville and served as the secretary of the building committee of the J.V. Fletcher Library. Okay, the H.V. Hildreth Quarry, previously known as the Reed Quarry, was behind the Reed home at 67 North Main Street. On the left, that's a 1900 photo of workers. On the right is a photo from 1910. H.V. Hildreth's contribution to the Pilgrim Monument in Provincetown, Mass. On the left, this is the dedication of the Pilgrim Monument led by President Taft on August 5th, 1910. The tower is 252 feet tall, modeled after an Italian tower, constructed of granite from Stonington, Maine, and to this day is the tallest all-granite structure in the United States. On the right, that photo is May of 1909. All Massachusetts towns were given invitations to contribute a block of granite commemorating their town. Westford's granite block was cut, engraved, and polished by the H.V. Hildreth Company of Granitville, and you can see it there today if you're visiting. In 1924, Herbert V. Hildreth of Westford Center, having his quarry at Granitville, lobbies then-Congressman John Jacob Rogers, who was the husband of Edith North Rogers, who took his place upon his death. He wanted Congressman Rogers to address the low-priced granite products coming from Europe. So the same economic problems and tariffs that we hear of today were around 100 years ago also. That's the correspondence on the right-hand side. Herbert Hildreth established a business with Herbert Fletcher in 1910 to create a granite company for the distribution of granite products. This company was known as the Hildreth Granite Company. In 1916, the company established a charter with H.E. Fletcher as the president and Hildreth as the general manager. The main offices were at 31 State Street, Boston, and at 150 Nassau Street in New York City. You see the point to the left-hand side is the advertisement for the Hildreth Granite Company from Tech Engineering News in 1925. And on the right, Hildreth Granite postcards from Boston in 1926 and New York in 1930. The Hildreth Granite Company used a group of quarries to provide granite products quickly to customers. More than one quarry would be used to meet the contract and supply the granite on time. Sometimes tens of thousands of granite pavers were needed for cities and towns for their roads. Other items for roads would be curbing and gutters. To the left, the correspondence of the Hildreth Granite Company letter from 1930 soliciting business to supply ashlar granite to Weston and Sampson Company of Boston. The letter also lists the locations of 11 quarries where the granite is cut. And on the right, that correspondence is a letter to the Hildreth Granite Company from 1922 discussing the price of curbing, signed by H.E. Fletcher. Interestingly enough, blueprints from the Hildreth Granite Company are shown below. The granite road drainage, and on the right, granite boundary markers from a 1917 blueprint, and these you can see all over Westford today. Here in this slide is a machine that the Hildreth Granite Company may have purchased. Was called the portable trough conveyor. And this is some of the correspondence from 1919. On the right is the blueprint, and below is what the portable machine looked like. Herbert V. and Stella Hildreth lived at this home on Main Street in Westford Center, and Herbert lived here his entire life. And this home still looks much like it does today. The Reed Hildreth Quarry, the left photo shows how large the quarry is. A derrick pole can be seen sticking out of the water. The quarry was used for many years for swimming. The jumping ledge is at the top middle where kids jump from, and the Granitville Woods condos can be seen in the rear of the right photo. So take a close look and you can see the proximity of the Granitville Woods condos to where the quarry site is. Now the Ministry lot at Snake Meadow Hill. And this information comes from Hodgman's History of Westford. The Ministry lot of 20 acres at Snake Meadow Hill lies between the lots of William Reed and Benjamin Palmer. It was given to the first parish by Jonas Prescott, Esquire, the father of Deacon John Prescott, who once owned the sawmill at Granitville. In 1853, Ephraim Abbott and John W.P. Abbott were authorized to procure a survey of it, and the latter gentleman was given full power to sell stone from the church lot for the benefit of the church. The quarry on it has been worked by Benjamin Palmer and Samuel Fletcher. And the picture on the right is the Congregational Church. And I might add that we have found evidence of a similar agreement with the Congregational Church in Chelmsford. Okay, these maps below on the left is the Granitville Woods plan of 2009, showing the location of the Ministerial lot. So take a look where you see that star, that's the parcel, and to the right of that is the Pacella Corporation on that map on the left. And on the right, you can see that star is to the north of what we would know as the Granitville Woods development. And you can also see the Hillside Avenue development there as well. Hammett D. Wright, granite dealer and cutter. The Wright quarry was located on the east side of Snake Meadow Hill. Jephthah, his father, was also in the granite business. Okay, let's look at the map on the left. Hammett and his father Jephthah worked the quarry behind their homes on North Street. The Wrights owned the land on both sides of North Street. And we're going to see pictures of both those locations where it says B. Wright. On the right-hand side is a Wright granite advertisement from the 1887 New England Gazetteer. Once again, Hammett D. Wright, the granite dealer and cutter. This is an 1899 photo and a 2019 photo of the Wright quarries. The one on the left, of course, is from 1899, and the one on the right from February of 2019, photo of the old Wright quarry. Jephthah Wright was born in 1828. He was listed as a stonecutter and dealer. Jephthah and Emma are the parents of Hammett Wright. And that house you see on the far right, Jephthah and Emma Wright lived here at 40 North Street. Below is 1872 list of some of the stonecutter dealers from Granitville. And once again, you see Samuel Fletcher, Benjamin Palmer, the Reeds, Woods and Eaton. Hadn't shown up before. And then Jephthah Wright. And that's Jephthah and his wife in those pictures in the center. Hammett D. Wright, Jephthah's son, was a granite dealer. Hammett and Emma May Wright's home was at 30 North Street. Hammett was the third generation Wright on this land. On the left-hand side, there's a picture of Hammett and Emma Wright. And by the way, they're both buried in the Wright Cemetery, which is located on Route 40. And on the right-hand side, the Wright House at 30 North Street, this home was known as the Oaks. Emma Wright's niece, Grace Chandler, is pictured there. The house has since been redone, but looks much as it did in this photo. They tried to model it after this. The infamous root cellar is located on the former land of the Wrights. It was probably built by Bella Wright and Jephthah Wright, Hammett's father. It is all granite construction. And there was a road that ran in front of this, and on the opposite side of the road, there is a foundation, which is another house that was owned by Jephthah Wright. Samuel Fletcher. The Samuel Fletcher quarry was located on the hill behind his house in Granitville. Okay, on the left, this information below is from Hodgins' History of Westford in 1883. In 1848, Samuel Fletcher, a native of Groton, engaged in the business and hired a ledge on the hill. During the summer of that year, he drew a large quantity of stone to the landing near the railroad and had it all ready for transportation when the railroad opened. It was carried to Lawrence and used in the construction of the dam across the Merrimack River at that place. Mr. Fletcher now owns a quarry on the hill and 2 quarries elsewhere. He employs 15 to 20 men, and the amount of his annual sales is about $10,000. On the right, you see Samuel Fletcher, business card in the latter part of the 1800s, granite, curbstone, flagging, underpinning, paving, bed, building work, bridge, and foundation stones of all descriptions. And below that is the Granitville listings of, once again, those who were working in Granitville at the time. And you can see a new name at the top, C.M. Cummings, then Samuel Fletcher, L.P. Palmer, Noah Prescott and Company, George and William Reed, and Hammett Wright. Samuel Fletcher moved from Groton to Granitville into his new home around 1869. On the left-hand side, this is the home that was moved from 57 Main Street to 3 Hillside Avenue so that Samuel Fletcher could make room for his new home. Fletcher's new home was later occupied by his son, Harry N., after his father's death. Walter N. Fletcher, a grandson, sold the home and the lands in 1943 to Arthur Haley, who who moved his mortuary business here. He had had his business down across from where the Haley Oil Company is. The Westford Haley Funeral Home operates from this building today. And once again, Samuel Fletcher paid notes and paid bills. Some of the earliest Granitville papers that were found in Connie Rogers' attic. 1848 settlement note between Parker Fletcher, E. Putnam, and Samuel Fletcher. And the correspondence on the right, 1860 and 1861 paid receipt to Samuel Fletcher from Charles L. Fletcher for meals and work done. Blasting powder was needed to fill drill holes which were ignited to separate granite from the ledges and quarries. Samuel Fletcher bought his powder from W.L. Kimball of Littleton, Mass. On the left, below, it says 5 kegs of black powder purchased for $13.75. Bottom, cash received on account from S. Fletcher. Both charged and paid accounts are from 1888. And on the right is 1880 W.L. Kimball, who was a wholesale dealer, business card. And you see W.L. Kimball sells cigars, tobacco, and blasting powder. Samuel Fletcher also harvested ice, which he supplied to the Granitville residents. This can be seen by, if you look at the lower left-hand corner, this is from the Lowell Daily Courier, January 26, 1884. The ice crop has been harvested by Mr. Samuel Fletcher at the best possible time, and he's ready to supply our village with a goodly quantity of this useful commodity during the coming summer. So he had to store it someplace. So you see the Fletcher Ice House, which was located across from his home at North Main Street. The brochures on the right-hand side are from Samuel Fletcher Museum documents. If you look, the price of ice tools were pretty darn expensive, okay? And whether he used all of these tools, he must have used some of them, because if he was supplying everyone in Granitville that needed ice, he would have needed some of these materials. Some more brochures that were found. The Briggs Ice Lowering Machine, Cylinder Scale Company, the Peerless Ice Balance. Okay, that's the one at the top, and the bottom, the Kingsman Ice Harvester from 1891. All of these were used throughout the ice business, whether it was the one Fletcher used or Gage, but they all used materials like this. Harry N. Fletcher, the son of Samuel Fletcher, continued the granite business until around 1940. Advertisement from the Lowell Suburban Directory in 1898 can be seen on the left-hand side. Harry N. Fletcher, granite, curbstone, flagging, underpinning, paving. Okay, and the home on the right, Harry N. and Dora Sargent Fletcher, and later their son Walter lived here at this home at 53 North Main Street in Granitville, and that's the way the home looks today. Okay, the Charles E. Couture Quarry. Charles operated his granite business for over 40 years. His quarry was on the west side of Snake Meadow Hill. Charles also worked on land owned by Hammett Wright in his earlier days. His son Joseph continues the business and purchases the First Parish Church granite quarry known as the Ministerial lot in 1926. Below, the pictures show Couture log cabins located on the westerly side of Snake Meadow Hill, and Cussacook Hill, which is the hill that today you can see in back of the day school, is shown here in the background. Charles E. Couture of Granitville supplied the granite edge stone and circle stone in 1920 for the Lowell City Hall. The letter below states that the contract was awarded to Couture. And on the right, this is the 2009 Granitville Woods plan again, shows the location of the Ministerial lot purchased by Joseph Couture in 1926. Granitville Materials is to right of the Ministerial lot in what is labeled the Pacella Development Corporation on this plan. So that's where Granitville Materials is located today, to that land on the far right of this map. Here's a Couture home at 21 North Street in Granitville. Charles Couture buys from Benjamin Hartwell in 1900. The Couture family lives here until around 1985. And below, on the right-hand side, is the obituary for Joseph Couture, who lived until 1961. Behind this house, incidentally, is where you would find the root cellar that we showed in an earlier slide. The Granitville Granite Quarries Corporation. Please look at the top and see the names. They are Sergeant Stephen Gardell and Fortuna Gardell. Okay, I mentioned the Gardells because they are now part of this granite business, and they were also owned land in Granitville that was sold to the Grodno Cooperative. Grodno 2, Grodno Cooperative 1 was in Forge Village, Grodno 2 was in Granitville. Granitville granite quarries were located off of Cowdery Hill Road. They operated from 1914 to 1920. This was previously the Charles M. Cummings Quarry, which was showing up on those listings from the directories. And what you see is granite quarries, granite dealers, curbing and pavements in Granitville from the Lowell Suburban Directory in 1915. And the Hildreth Granite Company is also using Granitville Granite Quarries Corporation. On the right is a letter signed by Mr. Gardell. Okay, we're at Kissacook Hill in Forge Village. Kissacook Hill is the hills I explained earlier, which is in back of the Normandy Day School. And we knew some quarrying had to have been done here because you can see a granite motion is a 1 or 2 person surface area for quarrying. This appears to be a motion showing rubble from some cut pieces that we located on Kissacook Hill. Probably the most famous part of Kissacook Hill is the John Gagnon outdoor classroom on Kissacook Hill. Students use the John Gagnon Trail from the day school to get here. Okay, once you get and you start traveling west from Kissacook Hill, north of the West Prescott Street area, this area was part of the founding Prescott family property and would be located probably in the area in back of where the village store and restaurant. And you can see the surface boulder showing a cut section of granite, which shows that some type of quarrying was done here. But on the right, this double-wide stone wall was constructed much different than other stone walls you saw, kind of fancy. And so it led to speculation, what could have been here? Was this part of the Prescott estate? Was there an apple orchard there at one time? We're not sure. But an interesting piece of history in the woods in Forge Village. Some of Snake Meadow Hill granite companies and dealers over the years were the Charles M. Cummings, the Groton Granite Company, the Rafferty Granite Company, Cockin Granite, Shapley Granite, Ephraim and John W.P. Abbott, Nesmith Granite, Noah Prescott and Company, John Vieira Granite, Woods and Eaton. And below you see a Advertisement, Charles M. Cummings, granite dealer, granite blocks and street paving. We wish to thank the following people and families and companies for contributing to the history of the Westford quarries. The George Merrill family of Chelmsford. George was very generous with his time before he passed away, giving us tours of the land. The Warren Palmer families of Westford and Groton, who we sat with and went over this, and they gave us some information that was very valuable. Connie Rogers, descendant of Benjamin Palmer, as we said, was very generous with the items she found in their attic. The H.E. Fletcher family, the Fletcher Granite Company, Granitville Materials, and the LeMagerie Granite Company, particularly John LeMagerie, who sat with Richie and I and went through and shared some of the materials that they had stored. Hope you enjoyed the history. Please visit and support the Westford Museum, open most Sundays, 1 to 3 p.m.